May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Uke Audio Podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Uke Audio and Uke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his. And anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we are honored to have as our guest Peter Levitt. Peter has written many books of poetry. He was the chief translator to work with Kaz Tanahashi, on the Shobo Ginso, the incredible, massive collection of the writings of, some of the writings of Dogen, the founder of Soto Zen. It's, I guess it's considered Dogen's master work. Many fascicles. They call them fascicles, I think, right? Yeah. Anyway, that was years in the making, and he's worked with Kaz on other translations. He talks about he's done other translations with other people. He's translated Pablo Neruda from Spanish, and he's got a Zen group up in British Columbia, the Salt Springs Zen Circle. And the website for that is saltspringszencircle.org. And Salt Springs is an island up there. And, you'll hear why he's there, how he got there. His website, which doesn't have the most important recent translation stuff. It doesn't have the Shobogenzo, but you can see a picture of him. and as a lot of past stuff is peterlevitt.com, peterlevitt.com. So, look, let's just give him a call after our pause to meditate. So, when you hear the bell, hit pause if you're of such a mind and meditate or whatever for as long as you like. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause. And we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation. And we'll give Peter Levitt a call.
Hello there.
Hi there, Peter. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for your call. Are you calling through the internet or something like that?
Yeah. I'm calling you with Skype.
Oh, yeah, I've used that a few times. There's so many different ways that people are using the phone now that I never know what it's going to sound like.
Yeah, well, for just talking to people, WhatsApp is the most popular in the world, I bet.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah, it sure is in Asia.
I had one of my students yesterday told me that, at least here in BC, I guess, that you can't get a regular landline anymore.
Oh, that's funny.
It has to be some sort of cell phone or something like that, which I find, because, we live rurally, so we live in the woods, et cetera. I find quite dangerous because, let's say the house
Right.
goes on fire or someone has a heart attack or something, and the power goes out, which happens here. You can't call for help.
Right.
So it doesn't make any
Right.
sense to me. But
No. No.
there must be some
Yeah.
reason having to do with money that that
Right.
they're doing that.
Right. Yeah. I haven't had a landline. Gosh. In I don't know. So maybe I had a landline still in 2011. Yeah.
Oh,
Haha.
yeah, yeah. The first thing we do, because we do get power outages, and the winds get fierce or the snow is heavy or
Yeah.
something like that, right? And so we lose hydro, we lose electricity. The very first thing we do is I have a landline, and I plug that thing in right away because you never know what's going to happen. So it's sort of my backup.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
how are you
Yeah.
doing?
Oh, good. It's I got plenty of sleep. It's a nice day, and I called you on time, so all is well.
Yeah, so so far so good. Yeah, I've had a good day too. I like to work a lot. I like to do physical work, and I was weed whacking about 3 or 4 weeks ago and hurt my knee. I don't know. There may be like a warranty date on knees, but so I haven't been able to work.
Yeah.
In the last 2 days, I managed to get some work done, and I built a bookcase, and I cleared up a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm as happy as could be. Physical labor is great with me.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, I used to do physical work, but where I live, there's people for that. I mean, for everything. And we're required to have a housekeeper. Any foreigner who lives here
Is that right?
is or be in a place that provides that. And I used to do everything,
Right.
everything. I did electrical, plumbing. Even if I didn't know, I knew so many people who knew how to do everything. I just call them up. Now I don't do anything, but now I walk and swim and do yoga.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
When our son was young, quite young, he said to me, "Dad, how come you know how to do plumbing and electricity and carpentry and all of that?" And I said, "Well, because I'm a poet." And he said, "I don't understand what that means." And I said, "It means I could never afford anyone else to do it, so I had to learn all that stuff."
That's right. That's right. I never wanted to. One thing I've managed to stay away from is working on cars. Never wanted to. Was never. And in high school when they were easy, I
Right.
learned to do a few things that were practical to know if something went wrong because they were easy. But yeah, good Lord, connecting gas lines, that's the last thing I wanted to do.
Yeah,
But I had to do it.
But did they? When I was a boy in, I guess, middle school, junior high school, we had shop class, and they introduced us to all the different trades, and we had to take it. But I'm really glad that I took it because I learned so much about it. And then this was in New York City at the time. In New York City at the time, they had high schools for the trades, so you could go to a school, and there was an aviation high school. I mean, they had different high schools that really focused on different trades. It was sort of a fantastic thing because there was no idea that everybody should go to college. Certainly, this is way back when. Not everybody could go to college, even if they were bright. Things were so expensive, but this was really a sort of great way of matching up kids with some predilection they might have had or some talent they might have had for the trades. And then also there was the academic kids. So it was a kind of very egalitarian approach in some way. And I think I don't know if they still do that.
Well, New York has always provided so much. And I come from Fort Worth, Texas, and we had technical high school. I remember that's where I went for driver's ed when I was 13, incidentally.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was
The
driving
idea,
at 13.
you are. The idea of a 13-year-old driving in New York City is terrifying.
I had a great experience around that because
Yeah.
when I was 14, I went with my mother and sister up to Rochester for a sort of family reunion, you know?
Yeah.
And but my Rochester cousins were a very Germanic family with a fairly authoritarian father. We all wanted to go to the lake to go water skiing, but there was nobody who could drive. And I said, I can drive. And he said, no, you can't drive.
Right.
I said, I have a driver's license. I've been through driver's education. I've driven to school. I drive on errands. I drive to see friends. He said, you can't drive here.
Wow.
I said, I think I can. He said, no, you can't. I said,
It's like a
let's
comedy
call
routine.
I said, okay, I'll call the police. And if the police say it's legal for me to drive,
Wow.
will you let us go? And he said, yes, of course. So I called the police and they answered and I said, hello, do you accept Texas driver's licenses? They said yes.
And that was it.
I said, okay. And Carl said, what? Let me get there. He said, this kid's 14 years old. They said he's got a Texas driver's license. He can drive here.
Wow.
And
That's spectacular.
it was a great moment for the family because they'd seen a 14-year-old stand up to their father.
Yeah, pretty wild. But what an imagination you had to decide to call the police. I mean, I don't know that I ever would have thought of that.
I did that at home, too. When we were in high school, we were having a discussion about marijuana. Maybe it was after high school. Yeah, it was like right after in the summer. And I said, no, it's not addictive. They said, yeah, well, let's call the police, see what they say. So I called the police. And we had a discussion there with the police, and they said, no, it's not addictive, but it leads to addictive drugs.
Right. That's the party line.
Yeah, that's the old line, right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
hey, Peter, okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask you a question now.
Oh, okay.
What are you up to these days?
Oh, this is it's a great question because I just got back 2 documents. So the first thing is my friend Rebecca Nia. She's born in China. She and I translated poems from the Tang Dynasty, Taoist women poets. Just 3 poets. 2 of them were Taoist priestesses, and one was a commoner and wasn't able to be a priestess. But these are poems from the Tang Dynasty. We spent about 3 years translating these. And Shambhala is going to bring the book out in the fall. It's called Yin Mountain, The Immortal Poetry of 3 Taoist Women. And so I'm in galley proofs right now, and kind of going over the poems, going over the proofs. And it was really a spectacular project. I mean, one reason is that nobody knows this work. If I say Tang Dynasty China poetry, everyone says, oh, Li Bo, Du Fu, Wang Wei. Nobody knows the women. And in fact, very few women poets from China are known. Li Qingjiao, around the 11th century, she was fairly well known. She was really known as, one of the greatest lyric poets in China. But they always said that the Chinese always said one of the greatest female lyric poets, because they couldn't just give it to her as she deserved it, was as just one of the greatest lyric poets in Chinese literature, in the history of Chinese literature. But so anyway, Rebecca and I started this project a few years ago, and it's been a fantastic process of our working together. And these poems are really incredible because some of them talk about their spiritual practices as Taoists. They also were very influenced by goddess culture, which was pretty prevalent in Tang Dynasty China. Again, this is stuff that people just don't know. I mean, I guess the academics know it, but most people, don't know it. And so in the poems, you find references or foundations for some of the imagery and some of the symbolism and some of the things they're saying that comes from goddess culture, that comes from Taoism. They mix them together, and they're really spectacular poets. And they were well known in their own day. In fact, they were so good. And so we put together this book, and what's amazing is that so many of the poems are relevant today. And in fact, given the Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade the other day, I was very moved to to put out there on Facebook, somewhere in I guess internet world, a very short poem by one of the poets that talks
Let's hear it.
Oh, I have to find it. Okay, hang on a second. Let's see if I can find it. And while I'm looking for it, we wrote a head note because the symbolism is not really well known, and it's really hard to decipher some Chinese imagery and symbolism. So, here it is, right here. So I wrote a head note in front of every poem to give so that people would hear. Have a sense of what the poems were about. So I'm going to read you the head note and this very short poem. It's only a 4-line poem. In this poem, we see one of the great pains of Yu Xuanju's life, the inability due to her gender to take the national exam, whose subject was poetry of all things, whereby she might try to receive the kind of official recognition for her poetic talent that would allow her to advance in the social and economic realms. Such advancement was no simple matter of an egoic desire on her part. Since Yu came from a commoner background, she was relegated to the position of her husband's lesser wife, in quotes, a low social standing akin to what might be thought of as a sex slave. Besides, her husband's primary and aristocratic wife was known to physically abuse Yu as well. The brutal hooks to which she refers in the poem are both the literal ideographs in the poems written by the male honorees, whose names were listed publicly on a tablet for all to see, and society's restrictions that Yu bitterly railed against. And so here's the situation. Here's a great poet, and she's not allowed to take an exam that might help lift her social, her life as a social being out of this pretty abusive situation simply because she was a woman. Women know this, right? So here's the poem. Cloud peaks fill my eyes, banishing the light of spring. Clear, brutal hooks form beneath their fingers. I hate that my poems must hide behind my woman's robes. I lift my head in vain and envy the names of their honorees. So that's a poem that could be written today.
Yeah.
And so there's that kind of thing. And then also there's poems that are deeply sensual because in both goddess culture and in the Taoism of the time, this book's called Yin Mountain. So Yin is the female principle in Taoism. Women, their actual lives, their bodies, their desires, their sensuality, their sexuality, etc., were considered embodiment of the yin principle, of the female principle. And so these poets really maximized the expression of that. And so they were very, very free talking about their love life or the sensual life, etc. And at the time, and this is something that really isn't known, certain classes of women, and these women were amongst those, had freedoms that we don't associate with so-called ancient China. They were free to take lovers. They were free to divorce and remarry. They were free to say, I want nothing to do with men. I'm going to join the convent. I'm going to become a Taoist priestess, which was very highly regarded. And so they had a kind of freedom we don't know anything about. And so they write about their spiritual practices, or they write about their love life, or they write poems of longing. It's a very broad array of poetry. So this is a really great project. So right now, it's really exciting. You can hear it. Right now, I'm in the middle of looking at what's called the second galley path from Shambhala. And then also Kaz Tanahashi and our new book is poems by Saigyo, who was kind of itinerant traveling Buddhist monk of the 12th century. We've just translated a little more than 300 of those poems. And so I'm just kind of finalizing the translations and making the final cut, basically, in terms of refining the language to get it both accurate but also really something that will really be expressive for English readers. So that's what I've been working on. It's exciting. That and weed whacking and bookcases.
What's the
exciting.
name? Do you have a name for the book? Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't decided on on the title for the Saigyo yet. It can go in so many directions. Saigyo, I don't know. Have you read any Saigyo's tanka? He's one of the great masters of the Japanese tanka or waka form.
Just assume I haven't read anything.
Okay, good.
And you'll be right most of the time.
Okay, well, that's why people like me get to wander around all day. Somebody has to write the poems. So, Saigyo was very interesting. He suddenly, at the age of 22 or 23, something like that, he left behind his life as a palace guard for the emperor, and he became a Buddhist monk. And there's no actual record that makes it clear why he did that. Some people say, he just didn't want to be a palace guard anymore. Some people say that he fell in love with the emperor's mistress. You can imagine what a problem that would be. and she rejected him, and so he hit the road, basically. But his poems are really terrific because he traveled all over. And in fact, it's said that Basho, the great haiku poet, that Basho sort of got the idea for going on the road, traveling along the road and writing his poems and writing, prose adjuncts to the poems to let people, have some clue of what he was doing or what his life was like. That came from Saigyo hundreds of years before, because Saigyo was in the 12th century. And so Saigyo, it's so amazing, David, because usually we think, the hermit poet, right? They're just so completely happy. They're just wandering around, and they just feel so good, and they have no restrictions. And he wrote about loneliness, like Hanshan did in some ways. He wrote about loneliness. He wrote poem after poem after poem about how heartbroken he was at this love affair that went bad. He wrote, some poems of, with sort of great respect for his own spiritual practice, and he was a Pure Land Buddhist, so he was very interested in reaching the Pure Land, basically, in going to the West. And in fact, his name Saigyo means sort of like, it's something like Western traveler or Western journey, and it's what it is really is. It's a way of describing his spiritual aspiration. He took the name of his aspiration. So that's something that's pretty interesting. But so Kaz and I have spent a couple of years working on this. We did that. So after that he and I worked on the Dogen Treasury of the True Dharma. And then we spent 10
Hey,
years
wait.
on that.
Would you please state that clearly? You
Uh,
worked on what?
that on Eihei Dogen's Shobogenzo, Treasury of the True Dharma, and
Right.
and so that's
You can
that's sort
get
of,
to that later.
oh, okay. so after we did that, Kaz, and the way we did it is Kaz would come to my house, or I would go down to the States to his house, and we'd spend a week at a time visiting with each other, and then working, translating, and refining, the various texts that have been translated by Kaz and some other people, whom you know, and so we had 10 years of that, and at the end of it, we both felt a little bereft. We said, "Gee, now we don't have a reason to visit each other so frequently, so we have to come up with another project." So Kaz said, let's do all of Hanshan. Let's do all of Cold Mountain. So I said, okay, let's do Hanshan, because I had always wanted to do that. So then we spent a few years, and we did Hanshan, and the complete Cold Mountain came out with Shambhala. They did a really beautiful book. And then we were back to square one.
What was that book called?
Oh, that's called The Complete Cold Mountain Poems of the Legendary Hermit Hanshan. And that came out in 2018. And then we were back to square one because we didn't have a way to visit each other again. So we were in China together. We had led a little pilgrimage sponsored by Upaya Foundation. Maybe 10 or 12 people came with us, and we went to Hanshan's cave. We went to Tiangtong Monastery, where Dogen studied with Ru Jing in China, his Chinese teacher. And as we were leaving China, we knew that we had the Hanshan work in the bag, so to speak. And Kaz said, "Oh, we need another project now. How about Li Bo?" So I said, "Okay, let's do Li Bo." But when we got home, we looked at it. We realized there's thousands and thousands of poems. So we nixed that one. And Kaz said, "Why don't we do Saigyo?" I said, "Great, Saigyo is great." So that's what we're doing now. That's the genesis of that book. So it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime joy. It's really a lifetime treasure to work with such a dear, wonderful friend as Kaz, and to do this work also, because the work really goes straight to the heart for both of us. Both for him as a painter and calligrapher and Zen scholar, and for me as a poet and Zen practitioner and teacher, etc. So this is it's just been almost like a dream treasure for me, at least.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I'd add with Kaz, anti-nuclear activist.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he's always working on that. He I can't remember what it is now. One of his books is, I can't remember. I don't know. I can't remember it. It's something recent book is Peace. I don't know where it is. I can't remember the name of it. Oh, Painting Peace. That's it. Yeah, Painting Peace.
Right.
And he actually he's just completed a fantastic project. He just did 30 calligraphies, roughly 4 feet by 7 feet, of Zen paradoxes. So Zen phrases that are paradoxes. And I haven't seen it yet, but he was excited because he just finished it the other day, and is feeling pretty happy about it. So he just keeps going, I mean, he's so inspiring, and we have a lot of fun together. So that's the other part. It sounds like all we do is work, but actually, we spend a lot of our time laughing together. So that's the recent work.
Well, you're involved with other things.
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, Um, so let's see, in 2000, roughly. So I live on an island, British Columbia, and
What's the island called?
it's called Salt Spring Island. And in 2000, and it's a really incredible island because there's a lot of painters here, there's a lot of artists here, a lot of artisans here, a lot of writers here. There's 100 published writers on this island, which is amazing. I mean, it's really a stunning thing to say. And there was Kala Rinpoche started a retreat center on top of one of the mountains here, Mount Tuam. So there are Buddhists here, etc. But in 2000, and in fact, now I'm thinking back to it. So I first came here in 1996, and I was walking down the street and in town, and suddenly I saw a drawing by Mayumi. So I went over and I looked at it, and it was an advertisement for some Buddhist group having some, kind of meeting or something like that. And I didn't know anything about the island. I had just gotten here. But they had a face that had been drawn by Mayumi, and of course, I recognized it right away. So I called this person, and I found out, there's an interest in Buddhism, kind of Buddhist community and various communities and on the island. So, and he didn't know Mayumi, but I think he lifted a drawing from something she had done. And so we became friends, etc. So in 2000, I put up one piece of paper in town. It said Introduction to Zen Practice. And just to see if there might be some, people who were interested in Zen, because there was Tibetan here, but no, and I think there was Vipassana, though I didn't know it at the time. So I put up a little piece of paper. 8 by 12 piece of paper, Introduction to Zen Practice, just wondering if anybody might be interested in Zen. I had been here a few years, but it was sort of hiding out. I was writing 2 books at the time, and so I was very busy writing this book. So, and to my utter amazement, 45 people signed up, which totally blew my mind, and there was too many. so I had to break the group in 2. So that began this Sangha, the Salt Spring Zen Circle, which I've been leading since 2000. And we meet every week. We have study sessions. We have sessions. We have weekly practice. We have morning practice, etc. We don't have a physical location that's ours, which I think is great because I don't want to I don't want to spend my life trying to get money.
Right. You just eliminated a lot of hassle.
Yes.
So it's I want to hear the name of the group again.
Yeah, it's the Salt Spring Zen Circle. And it's within it's within the under the umbrella or in the aegis of Suzuki Roshi's lineage, because I was leading it all that time, and then in 2010 I think Norman Fisher gave me what's called lay entrustment in the lineage, so sort of like an official authorized ability to do this within the lineage. And so this has really taken a lot of my attention, and it's been another great gift in my life because the people are so good. They're so serious, so sweet, so warm, so eager to practice, so helpful to each other. It may be, David, that because we live on an island and we don't have the anonymity that people have in the city, that there's a kind of almost, I want to say inborn willingness to be close to each other, rather than flee from each other. Because we're going to see each other at the post office, we're going to see each other at the supermarket, we're going to see each other, walking in the forest or down at the beach or something like that. And so I really feel that it's helped our Sangha's life to be a rural Sangha, here in British
Mm.
Columbia. And
Mm.
as opposed to, say, in the city where you could just, you go out the door, you get in your car and drive away, and it's, you don't have to ever see anybody again. But here you're going to see people. Your kids are going to go to school together. If you need a blood test at the hospital, sure enough, someone from the Sangha is going to be getting their blood too. It's
Mm-hmm.
quite wonderful. It's really wonderful. So we have a very
Mm.
close-knit Sangha. There's about, I'm going to say maybe a little under 50 members. Many from that very first introduction are still here, and we practice. And we practice
Mm.
in the way that, that has come through the lineage, and it's really wonderful.
What way has Zen come through the
Well,
lineage?
so for example, my teacher way back when was Jaksho Kwong, Bill Kwong Roshi. And so
Mm-hmm.
he taught us the way Suzuki Roshi had taught him. And then, I didn't just say, okay, I'm a sort of Zen maven, right? I'm going to just make this thing up. I just basically transferred what I had been taught, which, Jaksho had been taught, to this group here. And over time, we've really, really developed it, including, eating oryoki at sesshin, when we're able to do that. We've spent a lot of time since Showa Genzo came out, really, really paying attention to Dogen's teachings and studying, and that's now expanded because every Sunday, once a week, we have a study session, which none of which I lead. They're all led by students, which is really great. Well, I mean, they've heard me talk enough; they don't need to hear me talk. But this gives them a chance to really, get on the hot seat a little bit and have to present something and then be responsible for hearing, for saying what they have to say about it and offering their insight, but also responding to each other, because I'm a very strong believer in the virtue of Sangha. I really, I think, having hierarchy of a certain kind, maybe at the beginning makes sense. Everybody loves their teacher or hates their teacher, but there's the teacher, right? But my idea is that experienced practitioners have an awful lot to offer each other, and they should be given the opportunity to do that. And it builds Sangha, it builds strong relationships, it builds respect for each other. It builds the kind of intimacy within a Buddhist community, or a small, small rural Buddhist community. But it builds the kind of intimacy that you really want as an expression of this Zen practice, which has an awful lot to do with intimacy and has an awful lot to do with being alive and in touch with the world as we find it, as it comes to us. And so every Sunday morning, someone else is teaching something or leading something, and then there's a wide-ranging discussion and a lot of questions and answers. And I'm there, I guess, for clarifying purposes, but the students are leading it, and I love that. Thich Nhat Hanh said, and that's where I met Kaz. I met Kaz at the first American Buddhist artist retreat at Ojai Foundation. And Thich Nhat Hanh said at that retreat, the Buddha of the 21st century is the Sangha. And, conceptually, intellectually, that makes sense. But, what is that really about? Because, everybody is sort of so focused on the top dog, the teacher. But my hope, and it's come true. My hope was that if the Sangha was given the opportunity to present to each other, and this I'm not choosing them. They sign up and listen to each other and talk with each other. Then whatever the wisdom is, or whatever the understanding, I'm shy of the word wisdom, but whatever the understanding is that the Sangha has will rise to the surface, and then that's going to be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
What's wrong with the word wisdom?
Well, it's too glorified. In the West is we're so we're so attached to it's got to be you got to be wise. You got to be the wise person. And my idea is that our ordinary, compassionate way of living and seeing and functioning in the world, that's a good thing. And I'm a little wary of putting a special label on top of it. Of course, I use the word wisdom. I mean, there's no reason for me not to. But if I was to say to the Sangha, okay, look, here's what we're going to do. We're all going to get together, and every Sunday, one of you is going to present your wisdom to everybody else. Everybody would freak out. They'd say, oh, no, I don't have any wisdom. So in that context, I stay away from it.
Yeah.
We're just talking to each other, basically. And when they get nervous, David, what I say to them is, look, I know you're a little nervous, but let me say this. I tried to get the important people to come. I wrote to all the important people. None of them are available, so it's just going to be us.
That's great.
and then they laugh because, of course, their anxiety performance has been nailed. But then we have a really great conversation, and it helps. It does. It helps. So that is, I've spent a lot of energy on that, and I'm really, really glad for that.
All right. Well, you study and you do the ceremonial eating called oryoki.
Right.
What else do you do?
Well, we practice zazen. I mean, we sit, we chant,
when?
We have service.
How often does your group meet?
So COVID has sort of changed things, but we meet Monday mornings, Wednesday evenings, Friday mornings, Sunday mornings.
That's a lot. Most groups meet once a week.
Yeah.
I mean, the small groups, right?
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
And when we were able to be together, as I said, COVID has really changed things. I would say that like on our Wednesday evening sittings, which was the sort of big thing, maybe 20 people would show up, something like that, and that was pretty good. I mean,
what's the schedule?
You mean like say for a Wednesday evening? So we'd have two. We'd have two sits. We'd sit zazen. We'd do kinhin. We'd sit zazen. We'd chant Heart Sutra. We'd chant the Enmeijuku Kanongyo. We'd chant the Sandokai, and then maybe I'd give a short talk, 15 or 20-minute talk, and we'd go home. So it's a couple of hours.
What time do you meet?
7:15.
And how long are the zazen periods?
Yeah, so they're about half an hour.
And keening 10 minutes?
10 minutes, yeah.
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 All right.
And I think we've got to squeeze it in because we're renting the place, right? So it's like putting your money in the parking meter. You put your money in the parking meter and you sit down.
Oh, you mean you rent it by the hour?
Yeah, we rent it by we rent it by the hour. That's how we've done it for 20 years. But we lost our place because the person who was renting it to us, and it was a wonderful place, when COVID came, he sort of closed up shop. But just this week, I'm really happy about this. I approached the Anglican Church on the island here, and they have a really beautiful, I guess, room that's opposite the chapel where they hold their services, and it's a big empty room. It's really quite beautiful. It overlooks the harbor here on the island, and we just made an arrangement. So we are moving. We've got a new place. We have a new home. It'll be stable.
Yeah.
We can afford it, which is a big thing.
Yeah.
And starting in September, that's where we'll be meeting. So I'm really thrilled about it.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah,
Very
so
good.
it's good.
So, how did you get into this Zen stuff? Uh,
Uh,
when did you first get some inkling that
well,
there was
that there was
something to
something.
understand or something different, or you didn't understand everything, or
Well,
you
yeah.
know?
Well, it's a sort of I've told the story before, but I'll tell it to you. When I was 13, there was a comedian named Shelley Berman. I don't know. Do you
Oh
remember him?
yeah. Oh
Okay.
sure.
So Shelley Berman had these record
Jelly
albums.
Berman said the plural for see now. He said Kleenex is like a plural. What's the singular? He said I'm going to call them Kleeneces.
Well,
And the one
okay,
Kleenecy.
that's a good that's a good segue because he was very tuned into language, and he had a very
Mm-hmm.
good delivery. And so I was 13 years old. I bought one of his albums in 99 cents at the local store or something like that. I brought it in, and I put it on, and he's doing his routine to a live audience, and he says to the audience, "We know the sound of two hands clapping, but what is the sound of one hand clapping?" And the audience bursts out laughing. And I started
Uh-huh.
laughing, but I didn't know why I was laughing. I just thought,
Mm-hmm.
that's ridiculous. What do you mean? What's the sound of one hand clapping? That's wild. That's crazy, right? But I never thought about it. In
Mm-hmm.
1967, I moved to San Francisco from New York, and I was living.
How old were you?
I was 21,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife and I moved to San Francisco, and just coincidentally, this is a wild thing, but I won't go into it too far. But upstairs from us was a woman and a young man, and they were kind of interested in spirituality, Buddhism, and stuff like that. And he was interested in Tibetan Buddhism. And I'm going to make a really long story short. It was Sam Burkholz and Hazel Silver who are the founders of Shambhala Press.
Right.
They were living upstairs. We were living downstairs, and so probably remember what it was like in San Francisco in the '60s. Everything was being tried out, and there was a lot of talk about spirituality and spiritual practice. So I went to the St. Vincent de Paul Salvation Army store, which was right near where I was living, and there was a book there called Zen Flesh, Zen Bones, which, of course, Paul Repp's book.
Right.
And it just caught my eye. I don't know why it caught my eye, but I brought it home, and I opened it up, and there was the Shelley Berman joke.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know what you mean now. Yes,
Right.
of course.
It was the Shelley Berman joke. It was, what is the sound of one hand clapping? And I thought,
Yeah.
wow, wait a minute. I remember this from when I was 13, so I started reading the book. And what I found...
That's great.
what I found was that there was one story after another that I did not understand at all, but they all made me laugh. And I thought, this is wild. I had no idea what this was, none. But I kept reading because I was a literary kid, and a young man. I was writing, of course, and so I was interested in these stories. None of them made any sense to me. You can imagine, right? I had no background in this. I didn't know anything about Zen. I didn't know anything about Buddhism. I knew nothing. But I kept reading the book. And because it was San Francisco at the time, people were introducing lots of different, new things. Or they were new to us. We didn't know they were thousands of years old. But and one of them was meditation. And so Sam was very interested in Tibetan, and I suddenly was interested in this Zen stuff, whatever that was going to be. I didn't know, but simply because of the Paul Repp's book, and so I learned to sit, and this is also a bit of a strange coincidence. I had been told there was a real Zen master in San Francisco. Somebody that I absolutely had to go see, and it was Suzuki. But because I was 21 and very anti-institutional in 1967, as you can imagine, you remember what was going on then. I thought I don't want to go see some guy, So I actually never went to meet him.
Mm.
Of course, I look back at that as what a boy. Talk about mistakes that a young person can make, but maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe you would have gone and been there for a while. A lot of people just pass through quickly,
Right.
Once a week, a month, a year.
Right.
And you would have, and you don't have to meet him. Anyway.
No, that's right.
That's the way I feel.
Yeah, well, it is, it's how I feel also, because I got introduced to a lot of different stuff, but what stuck was Zen. I remember going to see Muktananda, and I went to see, somebody, Tulku Rinpoche, and I mean, that's what was going on in San Francisco for some of us, at that time. But what really stayed with me was this something about the Zen stuff that I don't understand, but it feels like it's mine.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to say, and I still don't know how to say it any better than that. It was not something that I intellectually agreed with, because I didn't even know what it was talking about. But possibly because just the way my mind works, I suppose. I wander around a lot. I'm pretty non-definitive in a lot of ways. It just kept staying with me, little by little. It kept staying with me, and then and I began to practice. I read some other books. I read, of course, I read Kapleau's Three Pillars of Zen, and I was reading these books, etc. But there was something about Zen practice that I liked, and nobody taught me. I learned how to sit from reading some book or something like that, and that was good enough for me. It was a good start, and I didn't have the pressure of having to do anything right, because I didn't know what I was doing. So whatever I did was right. And what am I saying? Is that there's a way in which I think I was led there by my intuition in some way. And I trusted it because that's what I relied on to write poetry. So trusting not knowing and trusting my intuition seemed natural to me as a poet, and the same thing when it came to Zen practice. In the early 70s, around 70, maybe 69 or 70. Diane DePrima and I became friends, and Diane. And she and I we really loved each other a lot. We were great friends, and she sort of made sure that I was sticking with my practice. She thought it was good for me, and she had practiced with Suzuki Roshi, etc.
Yeah.
She was then a student of Trungpa's after that, but
no, she was still a student of Suzuki's too. I mean, Diane would come to Tassajara in the summer with her kids and practice there, and they'd stay for a month or something like that, or longer. I can't remember.
Yeah, well, and she was so this was a good part of our relationship, because she knew that I loved this strange thing, and she loved this strange thing, and she had been with Suzuki Roshi, and she and I were very close, and so it was part of our relationship. And it turns out that then I just began practicing on my own for a long time, David. I didn't join anything. I didn't go to anywhere. I would go listen to lectures, etc. But I had no need, I think, to be part of something, to join something. And it may be, I've thought about this over the years, it may be that I was scared to join something, because somebody would be watching me, and I didn't want anybody watching me, So that may have been part of it. But after about 10 plus years or so of sitting, anyway, Diane and I went to Naropa together, and she said, "Oh, I want you to come hear a lecture by an old friend of mine," and it was Joshua Kwong, it was Bill Kwong, and so he came in, and he kind of looked around the room shyly. I just noticed him. He was in his robes. He walked up to the stage and he gave a talk, and it was a wonderful talk, and I really liked it. And then he was gone, just in a flash. So he talked maybe for 20 minutes, something like that. But it was a good talk. It really caught my attention. And one of the things he said in the talk, which I loved, was he talked about trying to get up at 4 in the morning to go sit, to go meditate, and it was dark, and he didn't want to turn the light on because Laura, his wife, was there. He didn't want to wake her up, so he kind of stumbled around in the dark trying to find his socks and put his socks on, and it's a very homey talk, right? And then he would stumble, try not to fall on his shoes, and get to the bedroom door to go outside to go get down, get to the Zen Center, and he sort of acted out looking for where the doorknob was on the door frame, and so like moving his hands down the door looking for the doorknob. And I what really caught me is he said, if you want to go through the door, it's good to know where the doorknob is. And I thought that's right. If you want to go through the door, it's good to know where the doorknob is. But I really heard it in that, in that wonderful symbolic way, that kind of can grab you. So about 5 years after that, I was just living my life. Everything was great. Everything was going wonderful. But I felt this big hole in the middle of me. And I had been sitting with, I was down in L.A. at the time. I was been sitting with, Maizumi Roshi, and by then I had been, really kind of practicing with other people somewhat. But I couldn't understand what that hole was. But it really didn't feel good. When I looked at my life, it couldn't have been better. I was writing, I was publishing, I was translating, etc. My daughter was thriving, everything was going great. So I called Diane, and I said, "Hey, Diane, something's not right. There's something wrong here. Everything's going well. I feel good, got food on the table, etc. But there's a big hole in the middle of me." And she said, "Oh, honey, it's time for you to take refuge." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "It's time for you to take your refuge vows. It's time for you to take your precepts." It was just, if Diane, she just would say things, boom, it's done, right? And when she said that, I burst into tears. I did. I just started to cry because I knew she was right. So I said to her, "Do you remember that monk we saw when we were at Naropa together?" She said, "Oh, you mean Bill?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah." I said, "I want to talk to him. I want to take refuge with him." And she said, "Well, what about the people down in L.A.?" I said, "No, there's something there. There's something there. I want to follow that." And so then, went from there. So that's sort of, I'm sorry for taking so long, but that's.
No, that's good. You take all the time you want.
That's sort of how it grew inside of me. From, a comedian's, a borscht-belt Jewish comedian's joke to, to Zen flesh, Zen bones. And
tell me about going to see Bill.
That was interesting. So I wrote a postcard, by then I was a pretty, I don't know what I was. I had some juice inside of me by then, and so I wrote a postcard to Genjoji, and I said, I'm a friend of Diane's, etc. I saw you give a talk like that. I'd like to come talk with you if you're willing to do that, and please respond. And then for some reason, at the bottom of that postcard, I wrote, if you never get this postcard, I'll take that as your reply. Now I don't know why I wrote that, but I think I was throwing something out into the world for myself, like maybe this won't work. But I got a reply back quickly. Laura wrote that to me, and she said, "Here's your appointment. Come, etc." Okay, so I did. I drove from L.A. up to Genjoji, Sonoma Mountain, and I went and had my appointment with him, and I told him, I saw you give a talk in Europa, etc. You talked about the doorknob and finding your socks and all of that stuff, and I wonder if you would be willing to have me be your student, because I think, and Diane thinks that it's time for me to take a different kind of step. And he said, no, it's too far. You live too far away. It's not going to work. Why don't you stay with my Izumi? And I said, well, so I tried to talk about it with him a little more, and he said no. He said, no, I don't want to do that. It's too far. It's too much of a commitment, and I'll never see you. You won't be here, etc. You have a daughter to raise. You're in L.A. And I said, yeah, I know, but I really feel like there was something there when I saw you. And I said, in fact, when you got on the stage, just coincidentally, and I said, I'm not talking symbolically now, but just I noticed that when you sat down, I sat down. And he said, oh, is that right? Now, I just meant that physically, but he may have heard it symbolically. But he said, well, that's nice that we got to sit together, but I don't think it's going to work out. So David, something inside of me jumped up, and I said to him, respectfully, it's too late. And he said, what do you mean it's too late? I said, well, you're already my teacher. And he said, well, since that's the case, do you have any questions? Now, isn't that a great conversation?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, can you teach me to bow? I don't know how to bow. I'd like to learn. And he said, okay.
That's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah. He taught me how to do prostration bow.
Yeah.
And then our interview was over, and I had a teacher. And I think it was good.
Did you stay in L.A.?
I stayed in L.A., and I drove up to Genjoji, back and forth, and I had a 20-year relationship with. Hello.
Hey there, we got disconnected.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure what happened there.
Oh, well, that happens. Skype will just hang up sometimes.
Oh, I see.
So you had a 20-year relationship with him.
So
Was that entirely with you in L.A.?
Yeah. So I was up and down, up and down, up and down. I was Shuso for him twice.
Yeah. How often did you go there?
I actually can't remember.
Well, was it once a month?
Probably. I'm going to say
every few months.
I'm going to guess every few months. Sometimes it may have been longer than that. Because I was raising a daughter also down south, and I'm.
Now, when you say you were raising a daughter, did you have a mate?
Well, her mom and I split up at when she was, I think, 4 or 5. So that was 1975. And then,
When did you and her mother get together?
in 64. 19.
Oh, so you, and did you get married?
Yeah, we got married in 66.
And so you got married, and she came with you
yeah,
to San Francisco.
yes, yeah,
Oh, all right.
yeah, 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 yeah. And that
And
actually,
then,
now that you're saying that San Francisco scene was wild. Several friends of mine joined the Hare Krishna people. They came from the East Coast and they stayed in my place in San Francisco. And the next thing I told them, hey, there's a lot of food and some really cute girls you could meet, over at this
right.
at this Hare Krishna place, and you can dance and it's fun. And two of my friends became Krishna people, and one of them I have just found a few years ago. He's one of the Krishna teachers in I guess he's in Australia now. Something he stayed with it. Isn't that wild? He stayed with it. But that's what I mean by everything was in San Francisco in the '60s. Everything was being tried. So
right.
I became like the safe house for the Hare Krishna people.
Yeah. Well, they put out a lot of good food in the Panhandle.
Boy, did they ever!
Yeah, I can't remember what days. Was it just Sunday, or was it every day, or probably once a week?
I don't know, but I was a young guy, and I would go there and get the food, and we would chant Hare Krishna, and we'd jump up and down and dance, and there were cute girls there and cute guys there, and everybody was having a great time in Golden Gate Park.
Right.
It was pretty good.
Now I want to go back. Where do you come from in New York?
I grew up in the Bronx, in New York City. Yeah.
My first wife, who lives in Spokane, Dayu Goldschlag, who has a little Zen group there, came from the Pelham Parkway area of the Bronx.
Yeah, so she was just a few miles from where I was. I used to go up to play basketball at this youth house, community youth center in Pelham Parkway or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's interesting.
And so, what was your religious background?
Well, I was raised Jewish, and it meant a lot.
But there's a lot of people who were raised in atheist Jewish homes.
Yeah, but I wasn't one of those. Yeah, I wanted to be a rabbi when I was 8.
Whoa!
And I asked my parents to send me to be educated. And I don't know how much time you have, David. There's a whole story that goes along with that. But I took it seriously. I really liked it. And I ran into a problem when I was 11. I really thought about it, and I told the rabbi that I didn't believe in the chosen people. And he lost his mind. He went completely bonkers. And he came running at me from the front of the room, yelling. It was amazing. It was like a bull charging at me. I wasn't being a wise guy. I really had thought about it, and he was, of course, this is. I didn't understand this, but this is 11 years after the Holocaust, right? And here's this little smartass in his eyes saying he didn't believe in the chosen people, but he was yelling at me about it, and how could you say that, and what do you mean, and all that. And I just said, it doesn't make any sense to me that if God created everybody, then he wouldn't choose.
That's right. Well said.
And he went crazy. Now there is a teaching that he could have given me, but he couldn't. He didn't have it in him. He just I think he was afraid that I was like the virus. I was going to infect everybody with this.
What teaching could he have given you?
Well, the chosen people often sounds like we're the best. Mm-hmm. right? You know, the Jews are the chosen people, so we're better than everybody. But actually, part of the teaching that goes along with the chosen people is that they had accepted monotheism. They had accepted one God. And so in that way, they were chosen and had chosen at the same time. So there was some kind of symbiosis there. But he didn't have it in him in that moment. So he kicked me out of school.
That's great.
Yeah, he kicked me out and told me never come back. And that night the phone rang and my mother answered it, and I heard her say, "Yes, Rabbi." So he wanted to talk to my father. So my father got on the phone and talked to him, kind of hushed tones, etc. And what was going on was, the rabbi was explaining to him that I couldn't come back, that I was no longer welcome in the synagogue, or in the school, or anything. I was no longer welcome. Yeah. So my father got off the phone, and I said to him, "What was that?" I was kind of scared, and he said, "Well, that was the rabbi, and I understand that you told the rabbi that you didn't believe in the chosen people." And I said, "That's true. I don't." And I said, "What did the rabbi say?" He said, "Well, he said that because you said that, you can't come back. You've been, basically, what's the word? Not suspended, but kicked out. You've been kicked out." And I said, "Well, what did you say?" And he said, "Well, I told the rabbi that we taught our boys to think for themselves, and I thought you were doing a good job."
Good for him. Expelled. You were expelled. That's the word.
Expelled, right. I was expelled, right. But then my father
Good.
For thinking. For thinking. So then comes this other thing, David, that's really interesting. This is interesting to me because it does have to do with the Sangha. They sent me to a private tutor who was a woman who taught out of her apartment. She lived in a basement with her daughter in the Bronx. And I would go study with her. Her name was Mrs. Pleater. And she taught me how to pray. She taught me my, Jewish history. She taught me everything. She taught me the holiest prayers. But this is the Bronx. And she taught it to me with me sitting at the dining table, which was a Formica table, while she cooked dinner. So she'd be stirring the soup or cooking the food and tasting it and saying these holy prayers. And she's spitting the food out as the food is coming out of her mouth, right? And I'm this little 11-year-old boy, and then 12, and then 13, and I'm studying with her. And what I'm seeing is that she's not making any distinction between the holy prayers that she's teaching me and how to pray. It's called davening, how to pray and what the prayers are, and cooking dinner and getting things together. And that meant something to me. That meant something to me. I was no longer at the behest of the rabbi. I was being taught by a woman she was Orthodox. I was being taught by an Orthodox woman, and by Orthodox, I should tell you this also. Part of what fascinated me as I became an adolescent was that on the doorknob in the other room, while she was teaching me this stuff, there were two items. One was a blonde wig with a ponytail. That was her daughter's wig, because as Orthodox women, she shaved her hair. They shaved her head. And the other was her brassiere. And at 11, it didn't mean anything to me. But 12, moving toward 13, I started becoming pretty interested in this. So there's a way in which that whole thing got mixed together for me. You know, my early adolescence, this Orthodox woman, her daughter. I still remember her name. I used to call her the beautiful Estelle. But the whole thing got mixed together. That spiritual life, that my spiritual life, and I cared about it. I was not an atheistic Jew. That's my spiritual life, and being in the house, being in the home with a woman who was my teacher, who was cooking dinner and telling me all the stories and teaching me the Torah and teaching me the Bible and all of that stuff. It got all mixed together. So that now I'm going to jump back, right? When I said that I had confidence in our Sangha to teach each other, to be the Buddha, of the 21st century, to share their knowledge, their understanding, their wisdom. What I came to realize a few years ago, David, is that I think it was rooted in those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
That I didn't have the idea of like the great charismatic golden teacher who sits on top of the throne. That it looked to me like spiritual practice, a spiritual life, is something that ordinary people do in their houses.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, householders, and so I'm a householder teacher. They say lay, but I don't like the word lay because it has very negative
It
connotations.
does?
Oh yeah. If you look it up in the dictionary, you know what a lay person is? It's a non-professional. It's somebody who it's defined as a non-professional and also not a priest.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't tell you what it is. It tells you what it's not. It doesn't tell you what it is. So that's like if you said to me, well, Peter, what are you? And I say, well, I'm not a refrigerator. So you don't know that much about me now, do you? But if you look it up when you have a chance.
No, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it tells you what you're not. You're not a priest, and you're not a professional. Yeah. That doesn't sound so good, right? So I prefer the word householder because that is what I am. I'm a householder.
Well, what if somebody isn't a priest, practices, and doesn't hold a house?
And doesn't, well, then they're not a householder either. It's very interesting because, there is a Chinese word, jusher. It's pronounced sort of, of course, I'm not saying it the way a Chinese person would say it, but jusher. Jusher means householder. Now, do you know, of course, Vimalakirti. Vimalakirti's name is, how he was known is householder Vimalakirti. And the poet Wang Wei in the Tang Dynasty, his name was householder Wang Wei. So there's actually within our Buddhist tradition, there is a tradition of people taking on the name householder, and it's honorable. It's not a big deal, It's just okay. They're a householder, and maybe that also means not a priest, but it's a way of saying this is what I am. And and I know that most Zen practitioners in the West are householders, even the ones who were
That's
ordained.
right.
They have husbands, they have wives, they have children, they have mortgages, they have jobs, they have pensions, they drive cars. There's very, very few, if any, monastics. That's a different category.
You know what I tell people here in Bali? I'd say, well,
yeah.
What here is the Buddhism from Southeast Asia, which is like very old original Buddhism, and
Right.
then the bhiksu, the monks, they're celibate, they
Right.
don't have homes, etc. I said there's a lot of tradition in the tradition I've been involved in. They're more like Hindu priests. They get married, they have homes.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I mean, here in Bali anyway, which that's a very different type of Hinduism. Hindu priests are, like that. And incidentally, Suzuki emphasized this. And there was one particular lecture he gave. maybe on around November 19th, 1969, moving into the Page
Yeah.
Street building. I don't think it was particularly well
Right.
recorded, but he talked about how we are neither lay nor priests.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was included in Zen Mind Beginner's Mind, and it's a very important passage. You know, we're not quite this, and we're not quite
Yeah,
that.
right.
And that's very important. It's very important because it's for me. This is just my own feeling about it, but it's a way of saying don't spend too much time thinking about your labels. Don't spend too much time thinking about what kind of ordination you did or anything like that. You know, we are a kind of amalgam. You are a kind of amalgam, right? You're Westerners. Zen has just arrived here, and it's going to be different here. And this amalgamation is what it's going to be. So cultivate that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was a great gift to Western Zen.
Yeah.
You know, to do that. You know, when Bernie Glassman received Inca or whatever, you know, from Mayuzumi said to him, "I'm going to stay away from you for about a year now, and you just go ahead and you make this the way you think it should be." So that's another, you know, Japanese teacher, you know, one of our, you know, contemporary ancestors, sort of trusting Western Zen people who they could trust to figure this thing out, figure out how to do it. And I think it's fabulous. And you know, just in my life, when I was expelled from school, and thrown into the apartment of this Orthodox woman who was teaching me incredibly deep, wonderful, beautiful stuff from the Jewish tradition while cooking, while the beautiful Estella had her wig and her brassiere on the doorknob. You know, I mean, it all goes together in my mind, David. It all mixes together. This is, I don't know where this is going to be 100 years from now, but I know that householder practitioners are very sincere practitioners, and I mean, I can't talk for everyone, but you know what I'm saying. In general, they're the ones.
Right. I have a question. The woman who was teaching you, since she was Orthodox, she shaved her head. Did she wear a wig while you were there? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, I never saw her. Her bald head. No, I don't know why. It may have been immodest. I wouldn't know. I mean, I was 11 when they did it to her. Because even though they kicked me out, I was serious. I wanted to learn.
Yeah, that was not a very good rabbi who did that.
No. No. You know what? I had my suspicions about him, and you know how children are. You know, they see the inconsistency. It's why, you know, almost every parent at one point or another has been called a hypocrite by their child. You know, for the simplest infraction. But what I noticed when I would go to synagogue to shul is that during his I guess sermons, his lectures, whatever they were, this rabbi used to lift up his yarmulke and smooth his hair back, and then put his yarmulke back on. And I thought he was vain. Now, you know, and this is, you know, so I started there when I was 8 years old. So this is 8, 9, 10, 11, like that, right? But I thought it was strange, and it made me wonder, because I knew that, you know, you're supposed to have your head covered in that tradition. It made me wonder if in the few seconds that he lifted his yarmulke from his head, if in those seconds he was not whole.
Ha ha.
Right? Because he didn't lift it. It's not like it fell off or something. He would lift it to smooth back his hair. And I noticed that in the way that only a child would notice something like that, right? But it made me question his sincerity in a way. Now, he may have been a very sincere person. I'm sure he was. He was. I mean, you don't become a rabbi just sort of for no reason. But I did have a question about him. And then, of course, when I told him I didn't believe in the chosen people, my suspicions were confirmed.
Right. Well,
because he lost his mind.
I'm certain that since then he evolved wonderfully. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to your daughter. You married in, God, like 64, you say, or something? Very young. Oh, you married in 64, and you married in 66. You and I are the same age. What month are you born?
Right.
September. I'm older. I'm February. Yeah.
You're older than I am. I respect my elders.
You married really young, 21, or even before at 20 probably.
Right.
And you came to the West, and then you split up at some point, and you kept the daughter. Tell me about this.
Yeah. Well, at the time, let's see, I have to go back to it. So the first 2 years of our daughter's life, I was working, and my wife stayed home. And then after 2 years, she was going to work, and then I was going to stay home. And it was during that time that that things started to fall apart. And part of what was going on is that she really loved working. And it was a time that women were being told, well, yeah, working is a good thing, and you have a right to work, and you have a right to fulfill that part of yourself, and staying home and being a mom isn't necessarily, right for everybody, and you should make your choices. And she was a good person, and she started to recognize that she actually loved working. I had a 2-year-old. There were no other men raising children, and I loved it. I completely loved it. I loved getting up in the morning. I loved, before my daughter would, get up and around. I loved writing. I loved reading, and I spent my time with her. And we had her in a I guess it was called preschool, day school, or daycare, or something like that. I don't know what it was called, but I really enjoyed being with her, and I really enjoyed taking care of her. I enjoyed cooking for her. I enjoyed talking with her. I enjoyed riding my bicycle down to the beach with her on the back. I really loved being with her. In the meanwhile, the marriage was falling apart because my wife was not getting home. She was staying at work later and later and later, and she was getting a lot of kudos. She must have been very good at what she did. And we were in that time period. You'll remember it, right? You remember this, the early 70s now.
Yeah.
When things were shifting, when so-called gender roles were shifting. And I was one of the few men who were raising, they called house husband, but I didn't feel like a house husband. I was her father, and I was raising my daughter. And so when our marriage fell apart, well, what's going to happen with our daughter? And I said to her mom, to my wife, you know that I can't have this child and not raise her. You know that about me, don't you? And she said, yes, I do know that about you. And so I said, well, I want to raise her, and you can see her on the weekends if you want. and she said that would suit me. And so it was just.
And did that work out?
It was hard. It worked out. Yeah, it worked out. It worked out. I mean, my daughter, she's 50. How old is she now? 51 this year. We didn't talk each other down, and she said that, shortly afterwards, everyone was getting divorced, right? But she said that because her mom and I never talked bad about each other, she didn't go through the kind of terrible loyalty problem that her friends went through.
Oh. Well, that doesn't always happen. Gee, it didn't happen in my breakup.
Didn't always happen. No.
Huh?
How so? How so?
Well, there might have been minor things, but I was, I had pretty good relationships with my exes. I'm in my fourth marriage now.
Uh-huh.
And my wife is in her fourth marriage.
Yeah, I'm in my last marriage. I'm in my third. No, it doesn't. But she said that, and so it worked out by and large. I mean, what happened really? It was really simple. We were together so young that as we grew older into our later 20s and et cetera, I was living the life I wanted to live as a poet and Zen practitioner, et cetera, and my wife at the time was living her life working and enjoying it and getting a lot of kudos for how good she was and her intelligence and all of that. So we were both, in a way, we had just grown apart.
Yeah, sure.
So there was nothing bad to say about each other. I was living my life and she was living her life.
Yeah.
So that was pretty easy. But it stayed that way. And then I remember when my daughter was 16, I had another relationship at that time. I was living with someone and in fact got married again. And her mom was with another guy, and I think they were married by then. I don't remember. But when my daughter was 16, I said to her, I've never been a girl, there's a lot I don't know. And maybe you would like to, stay with mom. And because she was a girl, she knows, all kinds of stuff that you are experiencing, and I know nothing about it except from the outside. And she said, no, I want to stay here. So that was it was a real heartfelt conversation. I thought I should give her the opportunity because it was true. I didn't know anything about being a 15-year-old girl, But so it did work out.
Say, did you go to college?
Yeah.
When did you fit that in?
I went to.
Did you go to college before you came to San Francisco?
Yeah. I went to 1, 2, 3. By the time I got to San Francisco in May of '67, which was the summer of love, right? I had been to 3 universities, so I was going to go to San Francisco State. That was going to be my fourth college in 3 years. And so I went to University of Buffalo, and then I left that and I went to NYU, and then that didn't work out for me. I left NYU. Then I went to Hunter College in New York.
Where's Hunter?
Where's Hunter? We split. Hunter is it's on 68th Street around Lexington Avenue in Manhattan. Right. And then I applied to San Francisco State, and I was accepted, and that was it's really great. Of course, that's when all hell broke loose at San Francisco State. And did you know Kay Boyle?
That certainly sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, so Kay Boyle was 64, 65 at the time, roughly, and I was 21. She was my writing teacher. I studied fiction with her. Now, she was in Paris with Hemingway and Fitzgerald and Gertrude Stein and Samuel Beckett and Joyce. She was in Paris as a young woman at the time, which was really extraordinary. And she sort of took me under her wing, and I studied writing with her when I was 21. Unfortunately, or fortunately, that's when remember Hayakawa, pulled the.
Yeah, what did he do?
Well, he pulled the cord on the loudspeaker because there was a protest and he didn't want anybody hearing what was being said, so he pulled the cord. And so she was the faculty member who yelled Hayakawa Eichmann.
Oh.
She yelled it was all over the newspapers. Hayakawa Eichmann. So that was Kay, etc. She was very, very involved in the anti-war movement. She was arrested at the Open Induction Center and sent to Santa Rita prison for a little while. She was a really great person and really great influence on me. I was a young writer. I didn't know if I was. I think I didn't know how to do anything in writing, but she seemed to like what I was doing and kind of nurtured it.
So did you continue at San Francisco State?
No, I left and got a job in the post office.
Which post office?
I worked at. First they hired me at Terminal Annex downtown. Then they sent me to Visitation Valley. Then they sent me to Chinatown. And then I ended up delivering mail on the Presidio
that's
Army
cool.
base.
That's a nice walk.
It was very cool because the other guy, there were three of us, three guys. There was me, and by then I was, I looked like every other long-haired guy in San Francisco. My coworker was a Baha'i guy. He had hair down below his butt, and he and I had the most wonderful conversation. And then there was one other guy who was sort of our, he was a little bit older than us. So I would go to the Presidio every day and deliver mail on the Army base during the Vietnam War. It was a lot of disjunct there, Dave.
I worked at Rincon Annex a little in '66. We'd smoke pot on our breaks.
No, I remember that. I used to buy hash down the terminal from my coworkers. It was it was reliable because you had to see him the next day. So
I loved it. I
laugh about it.
I got them that they had me originally, sorting mail. That was too boring. Then I moved up to the person who walked past all the people sorting them and putting them in these like long boxes, and then they needed somebody to unload trucks, and I could unload an entire 40-foot bed truck by myself, and I loved it. And it wasn't though that when you get a job in the post office, you take a test. What's this? Civil service, and you get a particular designation. Yep. I didn't have the right designation to do that, but they kept sneaking me over there to do that. And also, you could, I'd work one day and then call out sick and come back. I'd skip 2 days and come back. You didn't need a doctor's letter if you did that. I was working 1 day out of 3.
Yeah, well, that's not bad. You just jogged my memory about how things worked back then. I don't know why, but at some point I had taken the test for the post office. But my wife at the time got a really bad case of hepatitis. she was really sick, really, really sick. And I didn't know what to do because we had no money. We were running out of money. So I called my dad and I told him she's really sick. She can't even get out of bed. We're down to $80. I don't know what to do. And he said, call your congressman, call your local representative, and tell him what's going on. So the next day, I'm struggling now to remember his name because you would know his name. You were there at the time.
I was at Tasahara,
anyway,
yeah.
Oh, you were at Tasahara, yeah. So I called my local
Yeah, but I'd know his name.
And
I'd know his name, yeah. Go on.
No, I can't remember. Anyway, I called and I spoke to a secretary, and I said, so here's the deal. I'm 21 years old. My wife is 21 years old. She's very, very sick. She's got hepatitis. We have no money to pay the rent. We're down to $80. That's all we have, and I need help. And she said, I'll get back to you. The next day, the congressman's office called and said, did you take a federal exam? And I said, yes, I did. And they said, okay, give me your Social Security number. I gave them my Social Security number. They hung up. They called back not long after, and they said, you start work tomorrow for the post office. Go down to Terminal Annex. They got me a job.
Ah.
Isn't that incredible?
Ah.
I thought, wow, that's how it works. That's the way things work sometimes.
Ah.
I had forgotten about that until you just mentioned Rincon Annex.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So, then, now, what, how many books have you published?
All total?
Yeah.
About 15 or 16 or 17, something like that.
My. And look, you got a website.
Yeah, but I was told by somebody that it's 20 years out of date.
Yeah.
But it is just, it's just peterlevitt.com. But yeah, somebody's going to fix it for me because they said you don't even have your books. Your books aren't on it, or they're not all there, or it's old. No, it doesn't function. Because I don't know anything about that stuff. I don't pay attention to it.
Well, yeah, there I see you. I see you there. What I'm thinking about now, biography, recent work, other books.
Yeah, that's the part, is that it's not up to date. I think there have been several books since
100 Butterflies is featured there on it.
Oh yeah.
But when did that come out?
Well, that came out in 92 or 3, and then the press went bad.
Reissued.
Yeah, and then then it's been reissued, and people like it. It's just, I should send you one. It's just it's little short poems based on my practice, really. But not, they don't point at Zen, but I know that that's where the poems come from.
Mm-hmm. Don't send. Well, I'll get it.
And so. Yeah, but then, I don't know what else is on there. I actually haven't looked at it in years.
Recent work. All right, let me show. Within.
Right, so that's 2007.
A Flock of Fools.
Yeah, that's with Kaz.
Moon.
That's Finger Painting on the Moon. Yeah.
Oh, right, Finger Painting on the Moon. Moon's real big on that. Here, I can read it on the left. Writing and Creativity as a Path to Freedom.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Freedom,
here.
Right.
That's...
so that's 2003.
Right, 2004, A Flock of Fools, Ancient Buddhist Tales of Wisdom and Laughter from the 100 Parable Sutra, translated by Peter Levitt and Kazuaki Tanahashi. 2008, Within, read what people say about this book, and then 100 Butterflies reissue. All right. Now,
Right.
wait a minute. Other books. Ha ha ha. See, that's one page.
Where is?
You've got another one that says other books. All right, wait a minute. It didn't
Oh
go
yeah.
anywhere. Come on. Is that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I see it now. I'm seeing it.
I
I
don't
just
know
looked
if
it up.
other books is going anywhere. I'm clicking on it and I'm not getting anything.
Yeah.
All right.
What's not there is the
Oh, I
like
got it.
Essential Dogen's not there. Hanshan's not there. I don't know what's there and what's not there.
Well, it's a nice, simple website. It's easy to do. All right, publications. All right, then we've got 3 links. Oh, I see. They're right below. Books written by Peter. All right. All right. Well,
I don't even
here
know.
I'm going to read some that weren't that I haven't already listed. Bright Root, Dark Root.
Oh yeah. Right.
Homage, Leda as Virgin.
Right.
A Book of Light and Running Grass. And that says poems 1970 to 1972.
77. Yeah. I'm
Oh,
seeing it now.
77. You're right. It's a little small.
Right.
Then it says Two Bodies, Dark Velvet. There's no link on that. The others have links. And then it says poems. Did you do a book called Poems?
I did. It was my first my first small book. I was so shy that I couldn't come up with a name. So I just said, just call it Poems.
Ha ha ha. And here it says, that's funny. That's good. I think it's terrific. Books edited by Peter Levitt, Jacques Kwong's No Beginning, No End, and The Intimate. Oh, No Beginning, No End, The Intimate Heart of Zen. And The Heart of Understanding by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Right. That's his teaching on the Heart Sutra.
Is that post Arnie Kotler?
Yeah, well, that was Arnie. It's not post Arnie Kotler. Well, I mean, it's Arnie. Arnie had me do the book.
Yeah. So that was Parallax
Press. That
Press.
was when Arnie had Parallax.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's when Arnie had Parallax.
Yeah.
And that was great fun. I got to tell you, doing that book was really fun.
Oh, that's neat. And then books translated by you, A Flock of Fools, Oh, with Cause, and Sky Stones by Pablo Neruda. What's the symbolism in Sky Stones? Because that's a Zen thing too.
Yeah, not for Neruda. This is these are basically the stones from Chile that he wrote poems about. It's called in Spanish Las Piedras del Cielo, so the stones of the sky. And there's no particular symbolism with it, but there's some gorgeous. If I could find it, there's some really beautiful poems in there. I can. You want to hear one of the Neruda translations? Are you interested?
Sure.
Yeah, I like this one. This is beautiful. This is silence. Silence concentrates itself in stone. Circles close around themselves. The trembling world, wars, birds, houses, cities, trains, forests, the wave repeating questions of the sea, the next journey of dawn. Everything comes to stone, nut of the sky, skillful witness. The dust-covered stone on the road knows Peter, those who came before him, and even water since its birth. It is the earth's mute word, saying nothing, because it is heir to the first silence, the motionless sea, the empty earth. Before wind, stone was there, before man and dawn. Its first movement, the first music of the river. I think that is a gorgeous poem.
Do you what's your background in language? Like if you're translating Chinese, you work with well, we'd say a native speaker. I mean, somebody,
Yeah, right.
Actually, you don't have to speak Chinese to be a native
Right.
reader of it.
Right. Yeah. So she is, so for example, if I'm working in Chinese, we'll say for Yin Mountain with Rebecca Nia, who's my co-translator and partner, friend. So, of course, so she selects the poems from, she does this enormous amount of research. And then she will send me the poem, she'll send me the characters, and she'll also send me a literal word by word, which is very, very helpful to me, because then what I do is I look up every character. I read every character myself. And then I have an idea of what I'm seeing, and I see what she's seeing. And then she provides me a kind of interpretation that she has, which is really helpful to me, because even though I can read every character, I can't get the syntax very easily. It's very difficult, and I need someone to help me sort out what I'm looking at. I mean, it's literally I see every single word, but sometimes I have no idea what's being said.
Right.
At all.
Right.
And so of course this is, and this was true with Cause as well, and it's true with Rebecca, and so that's how I'm able to come up and make the the translation. And it's really a close collaboration, because there are many times that I'll suggest something, maybe Cause will say no, that's not what it means, that's not what it says. It says this, and then we'll discuss that. Or with Rebecca, I'll say something, she'll say, "Oh that's a good way to say that. That's good." Or she'll say, "No, it's not quite right. That's not how that word was used in, the 900s." So it's really, for someone who's word oriented or logos oriented as I am, it's just fun. I mean, it's deeply interesting.
Yeah. What about Spanish?
I speak Spanish.
How'd that come about?
Well, my mom liked it, and so she used to sometimes talk, in Spanish to me. And then when it was time for me to go to school, I learned. I immediately, I had it in my ear already, so I just picked it up right away, and so Spanish came very naturally to me. So I can read it and translate it, and I've been doing that most of my life, actually. I'm laughing behind to myself because it's more than 65 years.
You were in L.A. and now you're in Salt Springs, British Columbia. Were you in any other places in between?
Well, let's see. I went to school so I left New York. I went to UB, to Buffalo. Then I went back to the city. I went to NYU. I went to Hunter College. I went to San Francisco State. So I moved to the West Coast. Then in '69, I moved back to Buffalo. I finally got my bachelor degree. I got a master's degree in Buffalo. And then I moved to LA, and I stayed in LA in different places, Santa Monica, Malibu, Topanga Canyon, and had 2 marriages there, and then I met my wife, Shirley.
Oh, wait a minute. When you say you had 2 marriages there, are you including your first marriage?
Yeah. So my first marriage was was there. Then that broke up. Then I had another marriage. That broke up. And then I met my wife, Shirley, who I've been with for 35 plus years.
Aha.
And we moved to British Columbia.
Why did you move to LA to begin with? The LA area. Now, the places where you were living in LA sound pretty cool.
Yeah, they were. Well, we came because our daughter was not adjusting to the harsh winters in Buffalo.
Yeah.
She couldn't get well. She was always sick,
Oh.
and she was just couldn't be well. So we went to her pediatrician one day, and he said, I've seen this. There are some babies, some children who just cannot take this environment. It's too harsh. So I would suggest you go to the West Coast, go to the desert, go to Arizona, go to Los Angeles, go. And I said, well, I have a friend in Los Angeles, and he said, go there, because she's not going to get well. She's not going to get well. You're going to have this child is going to be sick her whole life. So I said, okay.
Wow.
Fine.
Wow.
We got in the car and drove west.
Wow. So how did you decide to move to BC?
So in 1995, let's see, 95, 95, 96, yeah. So in 1996, Shirley, who was in her late 30s then, became pregnant. She very much wanted a baby. She hadn't had a baby yet. And I decided I'd have a second family, because my daughter was already 25. When what was happening at the time in LA is that there was a lot of violence. So, for example, we lived in Topanga Canyon. I don't know if you know LA, but we lived up in Topanga, 10 minutes from the ocean. And what was going on at the time was there was a lot of gang initiations where people were getting shot at the beach. Women were being assaulted or raped at the beach. And Shirley had just gotten her PhD at UCLA in psychology. And she's also a poet, a wonderful poet. And a friend of hers had his fiancée shot to death on his arm walking in Westwood by UCLA. And so I no longer felt like I could go down and look at the sunset. Take Shirley and go down and look at the sunset. It just didn't feel safe anymore. And then also, I didn't like what was happening in America. I felt that Bill Clinton was pushing the country to the right. And I didn't want to be in that country. And fortunately,
wow,
Shirley,
you're somebody who left America because of Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
People have done it because of George Bush and because of Reagan and because of Nixon.
I was raised. I mean, we didn't get into this, but I was. My grandfather was a socialist labor organizer, and I was raised, far left, and so that was always with me. And I thought Clinton's pushing the country to the right, and I don't want to be around this, and I can't go to the beach anymore. But unfortunately, Shirley's family had 200 years of roots in Canada. Her mother was born in Canada, and so she hadn't claimed it yet, but she was a Canadian citizen.
Oh, and
so I said to her, we got to get out of here. I want to leave. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm not going to raise another child in Los Angeles. I can't. I'm 50 years old. I can't imagine chasing a child down the streets of Los Angeles when there's guns everywhere and the country's going crazy anyway. And so we decided to check out, a friend mentioned Salt Spring Island. We came up here and fell in love with it the first day and said, that's it, we're moving to Canada.
Cool.
And because actually, it's a funny story, David, because we had just bought our first house in Topanga Canyon 5 days earlier.
No kidding.
Yeah, we had just bought a house, and we came to Salt Spring. Shirley was pregnant, and we were walking up this mountain path. It was cold, rainy, foggy, misty, terrible, and I loved it. And I said into the fog, do you love this as much as I do? And Shirley said, yes. And I said, we have to sell the house. And she said, thank you. And that was our whole conversation.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
and we came home and we decided, that's it. We're moving to Canada. That's it. We're gone. We're leaving. It was hard because I was leaving my daughter behind. Shirley's family lived 10 minutes away from us. People were really upset. We had a Sangha down there. I was leading a Sangha down there.
Oh, you didn't mention that. Tell me about that.
Oh, I forgot. So, but we just decided to go.
Yeah.
We just said, that's it. We got to leave. I can't.
Well, you got to go back to your Sangha down there.
Well, that was so in 86 or 7, something like that. Now I'm guessing. In 86, I built a little room. I was living with my second wife. I built a little outdoor room, like a little zendo, little 10 by 12 or 10 by 15 or something like that, to meditate in. And I was teaching poetry writing classes. That's how I was supporting myself. And my students, they were private classes. I had 10 students at a time or something, and they were interested in what I was doing. And I said, well, I sit zazen, et cetera, And so people started to come, and I taught them to sit, and people started to come to practice together. And Jaksho came down one day and sort of gave us okay. Yeah, this is a good thing. Why don't you do that? He said, don't teach Dharma. You can teach people to sit, but I don't want you to give Dharma talks now. I said, that's fine. I don't have anything I want to say anyway. So, and so that's how that began. And then after that, marriage broke up, and then Shirley and I got together. We moved to Topanga Canyon. We had a zendo in our house, and we formed what was called the Topanga Zen. What was it called? The Topanga Zen Circle or Topanga's? I can't remember it anymore. I think Topanga Zen Circle, something. It was associated with Genchoji, with Sonoma Mountain. And I had permission to do what I was doing, leading practice, etc. And then we decided to leave America. And so I left all of that behind, which was very hard, David, because I was very fond of the people, and they were fond of us, and we had a whole life there. But it was really. It was a non-negotiable moment. I really did not want to be in the country anymore. I just thought this country has gone to hell. And this was 96. And so that's it. We moved.
You've gotten hold of me, now and then through the years about, accessing Shunryu Suzuki lectures. And what have you done with them? I mean, what was that about?
Well, I use them. If I find talks that either he gives or where there's a transcript, I make them available. I send the link to the Sangha and say, you should listen to this, or you should read this, or this is, or I find something that touches core of something for me, and I'll write an email to the Sangha and I'll say, Suzuki Roshi said this in 1969 or 1967, and then I'll write an email Dharma talk to people.
Now you said if there's a transcript, there's transcripts for all of them. There's nothing without a transcript.
Yeah. So, I've been using them over the years. In fact, just at our last Sunday study session, the the person who was going to lead it was basing it on a talk that Maureen Stewart gave that was in her book Subtle Sound, and she mentioned Tozan Zenji, and Jaksho had given me a copy of Tozan's poem, written out by Suzuki Roshi in his handwriting, both the characters and English. And so I pulled that up and said, well, here she's talking about what happened when Tozan was crossing the bridge and looking at his reflection. Okay, here's the poem he wrote, and here is Suzuki Roshi's translation of that poem.
Wow. Could you send me that?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Yeah.
And I'll make a little page for you, and I'll post it on it.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm glad you will, because I thought you had that, but if you don't have it, you should have
it doesn't sound familiar, and there's not a great deal in his hand, very little, and I have.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have everything that I've ever been able to get my hands on, like that on Cuke.com.
Do you know his translation of it?
No.
I'm going to read it to you. I just called it up.
Yeah.
So, isn't the electronic world wild? I mean, it's just so wild. We can talk about this, and all of a sudden I just pull it up on the screen.
Yeah.
Do not try to see objective world. You, which is given as an object to see, is quite different from you yourself. I am going my own way, and I meet myself, which include everything I meet. I am not something which I can see as an object. When you understand self, which include everything, you have your true way.
Gee, I'd correct his grammar there, but
yeah. Well, I just wanted to read what
he actually wrote. Right.
Yeah.
I know. You know, there's a thing in language, and I'm certainly guilty of it in Japanese and Indonesian. It's called fossilization. You just get to a certain point, and you don't learn after that, or you just certain things you're doing, you just keep doing them. And I'm doing something with some lecture of his every day for ShunyuSuzuki.com, or for a blog post, or something, or we'll be going over a transcript. There's these new ones they found at Zen Center.
Yeah, I've been excited about them. I've been listening to them and watching and reading them. They're fabulous.
Yeah. We've been working with Engage Wisdom, a business that contracted with Zen Center to get them together, run by a couple of Zen students. Charlie Wilson, who has a studio over in Oakland, and Shundo, David Hayes. And mainly at Shundo and Peter Ford and Wendy Piersick have been working on those things, getting them transcribed, and we've been making, everybody goes over them. And basically I've been a consultant, I've done some work on them. I only did one complete one, but they ask me questions. I get questions, and I write Shoaka Ogamer and stuff like that. We make verbatim transcripts, and then we make light edit transcripts.
Yeah.
But it takes time. It's very slow. I mean, doing first light edits were made by somebody reading Cuke.com in 1999. He did a whole slew of them because I was posting stuff, And that was he was an early Suzuki student who lived in Norway, I don't know. I forget if I was making a point.
Well, you were talking about the transcripts.
Oh, yeah. Well, you said if there's a transcript. Yeah,
Well, you were talking about fossilization.
Oh, fossilization. That's it. That's it. Thank you.
Right.
So his mistakes with singular, plural, and articles and pronouns
Right.
are, he just doesn't improve from
Right.
when I arrived, and I get mad at him.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, I'm going to defend him for a second here. I don't disagree with you, but his vocabulary it kind of amazes me.
Oh no, that's good. I'm just talking about that grammar thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he really had a useful and often creative grasp of English. It was quite excellent.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I tremendously enjoy reading those transcripts. So what I do now, because you have the tapes and excuse me, you have the tapes and you have the transcripts together, is I put on the tape and I listen to his voice for a little while. And then because he's speaking so slowly, right, my metabolism is faster than his pace of speech. So I just read ahead while I hear his voice.
Yeah.
And it's very pleasurable. It's how I did the Heart of Understanding, the Thich Nhat Hanh book. I did it exactly the same way. I kept his voice in my head so I could keep the flavor of his language. And then I had 5 or 6 transcripts of him giving talks on the Heart Sutra in front of me. And I just circled whatever the best phrasing was as he was talking and as I was reading. And that ended up being, the book as if he had only said it once, But with Suzuki Roshi, it's really, it's really a great treasure. I have to say, I'm so grateful. I mean, I'm one of the many people who are grateful for all the work you're doing. But it's really a treasure. It's really great, and because I've been at this a long time, and a lot of people in the Sangha, they haven't been at it so long. I think beside me and Shirley, who's been at it for 35 years or so, and there's one other person who's practiced for 30 plus years, and the rest of the people, mostly it's 20 years or less. So this is all new to them. All the Suzuki talks that are not in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, or in the last 2 books that you did. This is all new stuff to them. They're very excited by it. They're very inspired by it. They love it. So that's how I use it. I just keep introducing it.
Yeah. I've been working as an archivist, and I never really, one of the shortcomings of ShunyuSuzuki.com has been, I think has been making clear which are the best ones. But there is one way we do that. If you go to the lecture search form, actually is what it's called, there's a subject, there's drop-down menus, and there's people who were working on Suzuki verbatim transcripts in 2000 chose, I don't know how many, 40, 50 lectures.
Oh, really?
Fact checker here, 42.
Oh.
That you can just line them up. You can hit the recommended drop-down menu, and that's the only thing in it. There's nothing special selection. There can be many more selected. The Nothing Special series, and all those will line up. You can hit the Blue Cliff Records. You can go for ones given in Los Altos, a number of different things.
And are those the audio, or are they the audio tapes?
It's all together. You go to the lecture, and the first thing it does is suggest the verbatim version transcript, but it says more files. You hit more files, you see what other transcripts are available, lightly edited from the wind bell, whatever's available there. You see if there's any audio. Some of them have several audio available. And there's links to those things there.
Right.
You can click audio as one of your things, so you would only get the ones with audio. There's several drop-down menus, so you can make different types of decisions. It's actually pretty sophisticated. And Peter Ford is the one he's created that entire thing. He's been working with me for, I don't know, a dozen years. He's always working on it. He's always working on it. I call him the managing director of Cuke Archives. And I'm special projects. Like today I'll be reading, I'm reading Thank You and Okay. It's an audiobook. And, I go sort of slow, but I think I'll finish it in July and then give it to Shambhala. And I've been editing Suzuki Audio. We've never done that. Nobody has ever done that. And I love doing that. And that is something when I get through, that's something I plan to keep working on and at some point concentrate on because it really helps. And when I say editing audio, I'm not cutting out, I'm not doing a literary or even a dharmic, I'm doing one for sound. Cutting out excessive pauses, cutting out, doing noise reduction that is specific to each one and not too much because the background sounds good. Taking out coughs, that's oh God, that must be the most frequent thing. That and when he says but I don't take out when he says well, maybe I do sometimes. I don't know. I do in the light edits, good Lord. Taking out, like if he starts a sentence, he does this all the time. He's looking for what to say. He'll start it, and then he'll stop, and then he'll start it a different way. I cut out the first one, So. But someone, if they want to hear it exactly as you said it, it's still there.
Yeah.
But that's going very slow.
It is, well, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I like doing that. I've just got too many things going,
Well, you have some technology that's pretty good. I mean, there was a period where I was typing up Jaksho Kwang's some of his Dharma talk on a cassette tape. So you know what that was like, right? A few words, stop the tape, type. A few words, stop the. It took forever. It's just unbelievable, how slow it was. But on the other hand, it's a good way to study what somebody, what somebody is saying.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah,
It becomes phrase by phrase, and the phrasing is important.
What I'm interested in now is good voice recognition software. Now, to get it for me, for my voice, that's the easy part. But to get it one that can deal with all sorts of different voices. Anyway, that's something I want to get into because I want to have the transcriptions for all these podcasts because oral history is really hard to access.
Yes.
And so personally, I relate to the written word. Like you say, you just listen to some of Suzuki's voice and then you start reading it.
Right.
There are people who have listened to every audio, and some of them are really hard to, very low quality. And there's people who've listened multiple times to it. Because I get emails. There's different types of people, but mainly people read it. All right. Well, we've gone. I'm sure we've gone on at least 2 hours now.
Yeah, I I'm sorry. Once we start getting into the storytelling, it becomes a whole thing of its own. But it's been really great to talk with you. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. And I'm grateful for the call.
Yeah, it really, no, it's very, I'm interested. It's great. It's great talking with you. Yeah, come visit.
Yeah. Well, I've wanted to go to Bali. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but it's possible. If I do, I will.
I have a son and a beloved
Oh yeah.
first ex-wife that live in Spokane, and
Oh, is that right?
I have friends in Port Townsend. Although, Nils Holm died. Did you ever know him?
No, I didn't.
No, he was very close, and the people he was closest to in Port Townsend were Silas Hoadley, who was
Right.
Suzuki's. Silas was like Suzuki to Richard Baker at Zen Center, and Bill Kwong was too in a different way, but Bill had separated himself, so
Right.
I'd say as a Dharma area was very important, but Silas, there wasn't room for Silas in Zen Center after Suzuki died, so he, after a while. He wandered off, and he's been up there for years. He's got dementia, but can still say hello. And I have to. Bill Porter's gonna sees him once a week, and they go get a mocha or something. And so I'm going to be calling him 2 a.m. here, like 11 a.m. there on Friday.
Bill Porter and I have been in touch recently because of the Yin Mountain book.
Oh, but that's good.
He said, I'm glad somebody is finally bringing access to these poems. So.
Good.
Yeah,
well,
he wrote a very nice blurb for the book.
Oh well, hell, that really means something.
Yeah.
That in my mind, that's the ultimate blurb you can get.
Yeah. Well, I told Shambhala that. They said, who do you want to get? I said, Red Pine. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Let's get him. He and I met at Montreal Poetry Festival years ago.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he's great. He's great.
He's a great guy.
He really is.
He is a great guy, and what he's made available is spectacular.
Hey, listen to his podcast. I did a podcast with him a couple of years ago. It's long, too.
Oh, you did?
Oh, man, listen to that thing. It's really interesting.
Oh, I will. Okay, David.
All right.
You got a good night's sleep. I got 4 hours last night, so I'm going to go to bed because it's 9:20 here.
Oh, yeah. I did. I got 8 hours, 3 nights in a row. This is unheard of.
I never get 8 hours.
Well, that I usually can't. But anyway, I'm not regular, but I love that. That was good. Okay. Very good.
Great
Take
to talk
care.
with you. Thank you, Damon.
Yeah, thanks.
By the way,
a lot.
I just sent you the Tozan poem, so it'll be in your email now.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, great.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, take good care.
Thank
you so much.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So thank you very much, Peter Levitt. That was most interesting. Well, yeah. Thanks for all you've done, for all you've written and translated. And we should get you back and just have you read poetry, do another one. Okay. Oh, hey, I want to say one thing. When I was saying, we were talking about how we like physical work and stuff, and I said, yeah, I used to do everything like you, like I mentioned installing gas lines, which I didn't want to do. I said, here in Bali, I don't do anything. Well, that's true. I don't do that type of stuff, but I wanted to save my reputation, say that, no, I do kitchen work. I clean the kitchen. I don't do the floors because our housekeeper takes such good care of the floors. I mean, good Lord. But I do a lot of dishes, and I sweep the courtyard, and I sweep out in front of the house every morning, like a good citizen. Like that's like a national thing here in Indonesia. The broom, and they're not like American brooms. They're like, all these strands of, I don't know what it is, like straw with a handle on it, some sort of dried grass that holds together, and various other things like that. But anyway, if you live in a third world country and do everything yourself, it's not very nice to the people there because they depend on getting jobs and it's very cheap in order to support themselves. And so, anyway, just wanted to mention that. This has been a Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Dogge Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.